It is now.
Great. All right. Well, welcome, folks. This is one of the Tuesday trainings for the PMO, the ITE PMO. And today we're going to do a special topic related to stage gate process and how we leverage it. So this will be an overview for a specific project that is actually it's a few projects that Bill Berge is working on. That is a live example, meaning an active project where we are implementing it utilizing the stage gate framework. So Bill is going to walk us through how he has utilized the stage gate process for his project. A couple just housekeeping items. If you have any questions as we progress, if you could put those in the chat, we will make sure there's time to answer questions. I will actively answer them in the chat as we move forward, or the ones we can't address in the chat, we'll bring to the conversation at the end once Bill has gone through his overview. And then also please keep your video off. It just helps us with the recording to keep it a reasonable size. So just to kick this off, I did want to make sure that the first thing we did is show the stage gate process to kind of add the context around the conversation that Bill will have with you. But essentially, you know, most of the first two stages is just building that business case and getting that project approved to be an active project. The GIS upgrade project that Bill will talk through actually went through that process. It went through the BCCT gate, went to that challenge team for approval. So it has gone through these steps. And for those, hopefully everyone's familiar. If you've not taken the PM training, please make sure you sign up for the next one or listening to the recordings. But, you know, at the top, we have these stages. Every project should be stopping at each one of these diamonds, which is a gate, making sure their deliverables are completed related to that stage, which is the checklist at the bottom, before they move on to the next stage. And there is categorization that happens, which means for projects that are more routine, less formal gated, less visible, high investment, less risky, there is an altered tailoring that happens for the stage gates. So your stages and your gates are the same, just now some of your deliverables become optional, not mandatory. So Bill's going to go through a formal gated, and then I could talk a little bit after that about, you know, how do you scale it down for some of these others. So with that, I am going to stop sharing and I'm going to turn it over to Bill to go ahead and go through his example.
Okay, let me know when you can see my screen.
We can see it.
Okay, great. So before I get started on the stage gate process, I kind of wanted to give you some background on my project. And it's actually 3 projects. We'll get into that in a second. But just from a high level overview, 30,000 feet view here, GIS stands for Geographic Information System. And here's 2 examples of some applications that we have within GIS. And it's really all about, the grid, the electric grid and the gas, and showing, really right to the house, right to the residential customer's house, their name and address, and everything from the, transformer all the way down to the customer. It has all that information stored within a database. And here's a couple of visual representations. They have both a desktop application to visualize this and a mobile application. Now, this information is used for outage management when there's a natural disaster. It's used for regulatory reporting. Really, it's used really throughout the business. Very critical application via CNG. And I wanted to kind of show you how this fits in. So I mentioned I have 3 projects. And these projects, so I have the GS Upgrade Long Island, New Jersey Electric, and New Jersey Gas. And these 3 projects roll up into a program. So a program is really a grouping of related projects. Today, I'm going to focus on the New Jersey Electric project, the one in the middle. However, I just want to mention that my program also falls under the Energy Cloud portfolio. Now, a portfolio is like a group of programs and projects that have a strategic initiative around them. And then I mentioned here the IT EPMO, we follow that process, the stage gate process. And I just want to mention there are a couple of other projects that are outside of the GIS upgrade program that are also running right now. So if you hear GIS, it could mean multiple things. And I mentioned the Energy Cloud portfolio. This is the grouping of projects. So there are several here, grid management, meter to cash, work management, and we fall under the asset management for the GIS upgrade. Now, I'm mentioning this because you may have projects in the future that may fall under this Energy Cloud portfolio or under a different portfolio. So you'll understand this process. Next thing I want to show you is the IT EPMO SharePoint site, because this is very important. You should understand these folders, and I'll mention the real critical ones here for you. So the real important ones really is this IT EPMO asset library, the playbooks and processes. A lot of the information I'm going to be talking about today really can be found in this folder. And let me just show you here. It really has all the processes that we're following, including the stage gate process that I'm discussing. So I recommend you become aware of this, especially as a project manager or a controller or scheduler. You're familiar with these documents. The next one, I'm going to be bringing up several of the templates and tools that I've used. And the initial ones that I started with can be found in this folder here, the tools and templates folder. This lists all of the different tools and templates that we have for the stage gate process. So become familiar with this as well. And then the last folder I want to show you, and it's really important, is the stage gate artifacts. So if I pull this one up, and it has all the projects that hit the project initiation phase, they get a folder. And I'll just bring up the one for GIS Upgrade New Jersey Electric. So this is the folder that contains the stage gate scorecard that I'll talk about in a little bit, as well as any deliverables that I want to share with them, that I need to share with them in order to show evidence that I've completed a particular stage. So those are the three really critical folders in the IT EPMO that you should be aware of. Next, I just want to show you also the folder structure that I use for my project. Again, a lot of the deliverables that I'm going to show you are coming from this folder structure. Now, when I say GIS Upgrade All, I'm talking about program level. So this includes all three projects. I just made it easier for people to understand instead of calling it GIS Upgrade Program. But just to show you this, now my folder structure is unique here in that I have a financials folder. So anything that needs to be hidden from people, my cost controller workbooks, my invoices, things of that nature I put within this folder. This has restricted access just to my controllers, my GPM, product owners. And then things that are specific to the particular projects I put under these folders. So I just want to show you also within my GIS All or program folder. So I have an action tracker. We're capturing discovery workshops. I have my meeting notes are captured in here. My onboarding and team calendar. I'm going to bring up those examples. My risks and issue log, my RACI model roadmap. So these are some of the folders within that section. So you understand it's good that, you should have a SharePoint site and a good folder structure for your project. Now I want to start on the, dig into the stage gate process. And the first one's the create concept. Now, all these particular deliverables that we have here really become part of the business case. And I'll bring that up. Now, one of the things that's special about this particular stage gate is that you do not need to go to the stage gate review for this if it's a business funded, URB funded project. Really, you do that, you really go to the next stage gate. This is where you need to go through the stage gate review process when you get down to here. But I want to show you the examples. All these, particular pieces of information are in my business case. Let me bring that up to give you an example here. So here I mentioned some of those things were identify the product owner, product manager, an overview of what the project's about. We're here for this particular project. We're upgrading the old hardware and software, bringing it up to date. The customer benefit is really eliminating the risk that the current older infrastructure and software will be out of support and it could crash, basically. Implications not approving the similar. So is this a critical business application? Yes, this application happens to be part of is a scorecard app. Then we talk about what's your maturity. Now, normally you would be at 50%. If I bring up the stage gate, let me show you here. This is how you kind of identify it. So if you notice at the bottom of the screen here, we have estimate maturity. It's really at this particular stage. And I'm going to say from the developed business case, we're at about plus or minus 50%, we should be. But I was a little more confident in my estimates because of some information from another project that they had going on. So that had helped me to come up with a little bit of a better estimate here. Go back now. Here we go. So that's where that maturity model come. I estimated mine to be at 70% rather than at 50%. We talk about the deliverables that we have, the products, technology solution, are we doing new hardware? And then we get down to the timeline. Now for this particular one, the high level timeline, I use the stages. I may in the future actually use some of the other timelines. I've created a few different timelines, but at this point I was using the really the stage gate process timeline for here. One way to look at the project. I had done my risks, some risk analysis, and I'm going to show you how to do that with one of the tools that was developed by the IT PMO. I had a dependency, and then I listed some of the alternatives that were considered. For this particular one, we looked at, could we implement this on the cloud rather than using on-premise infrastructure? Could we do nothing, kick the can down the road? No, that really isn't an option for this. And could we implement something called the utility network for all of the projects? And that was something else we had considered. And then we had a financial forecast that we did here for these projects, as well as ongoing O&M costs and any cost decreases. There was a portion of this particular system that was hosted on the cloud, and we were bringing that back on premise. So this is an overview of the business case. So this included now some of the other pieces that we had here. There's a few bullets here that we had the high level milestones. We now have the finalized business case. And I want to mention, the next step is really this email comes out, and I just want to show it to you. It comes out each month. It's part of the process that they remind you, if you have any projects that need to go to the challenge team, please submit your information, and they provide the date that needs to be submitted by. You send it to this particular mailbox, and then you get on the list. And what they do is they do an initial review of your business case, provide you feedback. Then you go to a pre-meeting, and then you finally go to the real meeting where you have the executives reviewing your business case. Now, I did want to show, so there is also a workflow in that folder that I had shown you. on the IT PMO, I can bring this up. It really has detail. If you really want to know how this process works, you should become familiar with it. There's a nice workflow here that shows you the process that I just explained, where you get that email, you submit it. The IT EPMO does the review, then you go to the pre-meeting, and then you have your meeting. So like I mentioned, make sure you go through those folders and find these nice tools that are out there that describe the process. So I took mine to the challenge response team, and it was approved. Now, one of the other things that I want to go through here are, we get here this qualitative risk assessment, and I want to show you that tool. So it's part of the RAID log, and I've added a few more things in here. I have my key decisions, open items. I did put my lessons learned in here, a little bit different format. And I did include another tab for project delays. I want to keep track of those. Now, one of the things I did remove my action items, and I'll show you that in a little bit. I did remove it from here only to make it easier for people to find it. But normally it would also be included in this RAID log. So here we have my project risks. And these are identified for both Long Island, and I did combine mine. I have my 3 projects. For New Jersey, they're basically both, they share the same environment, same infrastructure. So I had done it that way. And one of the things I want to mention, so as you're identifying your risks and you're doing like first step is the qualitative risk assessment, what you do is you identify, you have a meeting with your team, you think through what types of risks could happen. And I'll say one of my risks is the availability of the infrastructure team because of other projects that are happening at the same time. So I met with my core team first. We came up with this, identified this could be a risk for us. And then before we did the probability and impact, what I did was I included the scale in here. And this is in the template that the ITPMO provides. And I copied it in here. We switch back and forth. I think this is a nice way to work. So we'd say, okay, for this particular risk, what do you guys think it is? And they come up with something, well, I think it's, likely. And someone else say, well, I think it's, highly likely for this particular one. And then we debate it. And then we come up with, oh yeah, I think you're right. It's highly likely. And then the impact, we give it the rating from these descriptions. And then I would come back here and I'd put the numbers in. That's the way I'd work through my risk analysis. For each one of the risks that were identified, with my core team, we went through this. I want to mention then, I took this then to my steering committee and reviewed it with them, and they came up with some additional risks. We went through the same process. We were identified, we used the scales on this slide to go back to this and identify the numbers. This right here is a calculated field. And then we did identify what the mitigation strategy would be here. Now, one of the things I want to mention, I'll go back to here, and I want to do it because I'm in the RAID log right now, but this normally wouldn't happen until you get down to here, but you can do it at the same time, but it's not required until you get down to your, this particular phase, the develop initial design, and it's your quantitative risk assessment right here. I'm going to show you that next because I'm in that tool. And I kind of want to show you that particular piece. So I hid those columns here. But what I did was what I would do is unhide these columns then, and these would normally be blank. And what I talked to the team about, okay, we know we have this risk out here. Now, what do you think is the minimum amount of days that would be impacted if this risk hits? What do you think would be the minimum, the most likely, and the maximum duration we would hit with this if this risk hits? So we identified those, and then we used the PERT, which is it's a tool called Program Evaluation and Review Technology. And I use this not only for risk assessments, but also sometimes for planning schedules. This is a good way to determine, well, what is this task going to take? Think about your tasks. And then not everyone can say, oh, they'll just give you this one. Oh, it's most likely going to take this. Well, what do you think is the best case we can do it and the worst case it's going to take to do this task? So I recommend you use this more than just for risk analysis. You can also use it for your scheduling. But anyhow, what happens with PERT is it's a formula. It takes your minimum duration, 4 times your most likely, and then plus your maximum. So that's 6 parts, totals those up and divide by 6, and that gets your PERT duration. So this is a much better number to use than to just have people give you one number that they estimate is going to be the impact. This gives you a better number to use. And then what I did was I added these columns here based on this. What are the costs associated with it? So what I did was I looked at what my project weekly cost would be, and then I divided it by 5, it came up with a daily cost. So I multiplied, these are basically just multiplying out my min, and times the daily cost, times the number of days, and I basically get that. And then also the same thing with the PERT. So here's how I'm able to determine what the costs are for the risks. While I'm here also, I just want to show you a few other things that I have here. So any key decisions that the project team members make, I capture them here. I have some open items, things that we still need to address. My lessons learned, I didn't capture them in their formal format yet. I just put a lessons learned out there. And in the project delays, I'm capturing in case we need to do a project change request at some point. We have some of these delays have been tracked. Okay, that's my RAID log. So let's see here now. So for this particular project initiation phase, what I would do is I would go to my stage gate scorecard. Now this gets created by the IT PMO, and it's in that folder that I had shown you earlier. And I would fill out my scorecard. So I filled it out for the create concept. I identified where to find these particular documents or these particular deliverables. Then the same thing for my develop the business case, where I identified these. I haven't shown you yet the project execution plan, but I'll bring that up. So where these things, so basically what you do is you complete this, then you send an email to the IT EPMO that they're ready to evaluate your deliverables to allow you to go to the next stage gate. Let me go back to here and show you some of the other pieces here. One of the other pieces here is the ensure project codes are ready for use. So that's one thing you should talk to your controller about. And I'll bring up my controller workbook just to show you where the WBS is in here. Your control workbook should have your work breakdown structure for the financials. So here's how you can prove evidence that you have your financials created for your project. Also, you develop your initial schedule. Now I want to bring this up. This is an extract out of Oracle P6, but I'll tell you what I did with my project, and you probably will have the same, come across the same thing with your projects. So my vendor was using Microsoft Project. So what they did was they created a Microsoft Project plan. I took that plan, I added all the stage gate deliverables to it, and then I exported it out, or I just copied and pasted it from Microsoft Project into Excel. And I gave that to my scheduler who uploaded it into P6. That was my initial. This is my latest extract I'm showing you here. But basically it looked something like this, where it had the task, it had the start and finish in Microsoft Excel, and it was imported into Oracle P6. Okay, one of the things I haven't shown you now is and a very important one is your project execution plan, or PEP. I want to show you some of the sections in here because it's important. So this contains both your project charter and your project management plans. So I'll show you, this is, I've already mentioned what the scope of the project is. What are the high level objectives of the project? Who are my primary stakeholders from the business? And you should mention here what's in scope as well as what's out of scope. So for this particular project, upgrading from the geometric network to the utility network for electric was out of scope. I made sure I listed that in my project execution plan. As well as we weren't moving any infrastructure to the cloud, we were moving everything on premise. We're also, I should mention, as part of this project, we're evaluating a document management system, but it's not part of this project to implement it. I want to make sure that was very clear and out of scope. Now here's the GOES model. This is one representation of it that we have in Word. I'm going to show you a better representation of this in a PowerPoint slide. But you can also represent it in Microsoft Word. And it's really your governance structure, your governance, your oversight, your sponsor. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I have a much better slide on that. Again, how is this project categorized? And really in the StageGate process guidebook, playbook, it tells you how to go through the categorization of a project. And Sharon had alluded to that earlier. But mine's a formal gated, large project. Then I go into my milestones and my deliverables. I happen to have these, and there's quite a few of them. I'm going to skip it that we had identified. I want to get down to the project management plans, some of the other pieces here, and show you. So first, the budget, you put together the high level costs. You saw that in the business case. We identified the risks, let's talk about risk management, any assumptions, constraints. And then we get into the project management plans here. And a lot of this is really referencing all the StageGate process. That's really all you need to do in this particular piece. Reference it from a cost management, we're using the cost management workbook. We're using our scheduler for schedule management. Here we have procurement. I have an RFP for this project, and I put around some dates around that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that RFP process as well. QA staffing. So our staffing plan listed all the roles that we knew would be on this project. Talked about risk management already. Status planning, part of the StageGate. OCM, we actually have a vendor that's going to be working with us on OCM. So I do mention some of that here. Document management. So I created that SharePoint site for document management. And that's it for that. Hopefully you have a good understanding now of what the PEP consists of. Next, I want to talk about, the kickoff with the business. Let me show you what that looks like. So I've explained this slide to you. This is a good way to represent the project scope to the business. I met with them, described this to them so they understood it. Then here's another example. Let me make this a little bigger here. Here's a good example of the, matter of fact, let me just go back. So this is what I had for the scope of the project in business terms. Here's the GOES model for one of the electric, Long Island electric upgrade. So here's the way you have the, I have the steering committee for the Energy Cloud TMO that I'm a part of. I have my program steering committee for the 3 projects. And then I have my, team, my project sponsor for this particular project, this GIS upgrade, Long Island. My project team, which includes the controller and scheduler, line of business, technology, and OCM. Here I have my, now I have a particular vendor, a solution integrator for this, SSP. That's what that RFP is about, that I'll show you in a minute. And that we have a number of people from SSP that are part of this. And then I put together, here's another example of a timeline that I put together. This is more in line with what the business would like to see rather than the stage gate process. And I kind of this was really to describe when they would be needed. They're heavily needed, the business, during the design discovery workshops, during the functional, UAT testing. They're going to be involved in training, and then obviously go live. Going to skip this. And this shows the level of participation for each of the types of roles that we have on the project. It lets them know how many hours per quarter they'll be needed for the different types of activities that they're doing. I've explained that. And I also explained to them the steering with the Energy Cloud TMO, what they provide for us, some of these things down here. I mentioned to them that we're following the stage gate process. That's a very formal, IT project management process that we're following. Make sure they're aware of that. And then this happened to be some of the requirement gathering that we have for discovery workshops that I made them aware of. And then we go into the OCM particular component that our vendor solution integrator spoke with them about. I just want to give you an example, and this is a sponsorship model, an example of what to do for a business kickoff meeting. Okay. Let's see what I have not covered here. One of the last deliverables on here, and I'm not doing these necessarily in order, is the cybersecurity. This is a form you fill out to really engage the cybersecurity team. You fill this out. It's pretty good, overview. They want to know what kind of data you're using. It's really important here. What vendors you're using, what type of data. Are there any APIs to other systems? So there's a few questions that you answer. It's pretty short. And then what you do is you send it to this particular mailbox. They have it right in here. Send it to that mailbox, and then they'll get back to you with a resource assigned to your project. Okay.
So there's no approval per se. They're just going to assign a resource.
So I guess they're going to sign. No, you haven't gotten to any of the approvals yet. This is basically just to make them aware of your project. This is really for awareness, so they understand what you're going to need from their team.
So should we expect a reply?
That's the thing. Actually, I did not get a reply. I need to follow up many times. It's true. It's a good, valid point. Keep following up with them. I actually escalated through my Energy Cloud Transformation Management Office. And then actually the funny thing was, cybersecurity was forwarded the invite to my business kickoff meeting. They went to the CIO and said, we haven't been informed GIS is doing this project. Then I forwarded them the email that had all the submissions. I had all the submissions. So it was kind of embarrassing for them that they were informed back in September and they hadn't gotten back to me with that. So that is a concern. You're right. You need to keep following up on that one. I know they're inundated right now and they have a lot of work on their plate, and they're not getting back to people.
Yeah, because mine's 2 months overdue. I followed up again today.
Yep, mine was as well. That's a great question. Thanks for asking that. And yeah, I do not have an answer for that. We need, maybe we can speak with Rich Brenton about that, what can be done.
Yeah, and we work very closely with cyber. So the reason, just to give a little history, the reason these templates are out there is because we work with cyber to figure out where in the stage gate process they wanted us to engage them, what type of information they want. And it's not necessarily an approval that you get from them until they come back with is when you get into initial design and design, you'll start to submit additional documentation, and then they will make a judgment call on potentially additional testing requirements, things like that you need. It is not, we do have SLAs around some of this stuff, but not that questionnaire specifically. But some of the requirements, once you have your detailed design, that kind of thing, testing requirements, they do have an SLA set to that. So just so you guys know, we are working with them to smooth out this delay, but they are understaffed. So they're struggling a little as well.
Yeah. I was going to demonstrate some of the stuff in ServiceNow, but I know we're moving away from it. I'm not going to spend time there, but these deliverables, get stored in ServiceNow currently, as well as you add the risks there. But I'm not going to demonstrate that today. Next thing I want to go in. So now I've gone through, I did my stage, I did my scorecard. I went through, I got the approvals to move forward to my next phase. So like I said, I had emailed them. They got back to me. I had to do some updates. Then they gave me the approval. So now we're in the develop initial design, which is where I am currently. And I want to show you, I need an RFP to get that solution integrator in. There were 3 vendors we had. Let me show you just I'll show you what the requirements look like. So this is, you'd need to get from somebody from procurement. You'd reach out to procurement and get the templates. But this is kind of this is what it looks like. There's some assessment pieces that need to be filled out. And then these were the 2 tabs. They really were the requirements for this was a combined RFP for all 3 of my projects, actually. So it listed all the requirements that they needed to deliver on, what the milestones were. So when they reply back with a statement of work, it would match this request. Here's all my requirements for New Jersey that were requested. So you have an understanding what that looks like. Okay, go back to my slide here. Okay, and then I got back, we got back these statements of work, okay, for the projects. And there's really one thing I want to mention in here. It's very important. So now make sure you understand the template that goes out. My procurement person sent it out directly, and I wasn't aware that there was a particular section that should have been in here. That's called the critical performance specification. So make sure when you get your statements of work back from your vendors that this has not been removed. For mine, it was. We found out after the fact. But really what this is targets that if they do not hit the milestones, that they pay a penalty. And this is all about negotiation with the vendor. They have some template, some standards here, but really you need to negotiate this. And it became a sticking point. So make sure you start negotiating this early with your vendor, rather than later. So here it's a percent. So if they miss this particular milestone that they've identified, then 5% of that payment, if they're late by 2 weeks, I should say that we do not have to pay we subtract this amount from the payment, from that milestone payment.
Am I correct, Bill, that you negotiated this with the vendor?
Yo, yes, this is a strong, it's almost like a game of chess, this particular one. For every move we had, they had a counter move to negotiate this in. And we actually did something that was we had to get special approval, this mobilization fee, which is not normally in statements of work. But this was a trusted vendor that they've been doing business with for several years. And on one of their other projects, PSC&G had impacted them negatively. So they were very hesitant to take on risk with this. So we had to do some strong negotiation around this particular piece. So you'll definitely spend some time here. A lot of vendors are pushing back on this, but it needs to be there. You can't get away with just removing it. And matter of fact, we had to escalate this to the president of the other company, of that vendor, to actually push this negotiation through. Okay, so that's the statement of work. Let me show you something else here. So one of the things before you can get that statement of work, before your procurement person will give it back to you, they won't share that particular piece. What you need to come up with is scoring. There's a scoring model. I need to work as a team on this. And I'll just show you the high level. So there's a section of you come up with the criteria, then you have to give the weighting for some of these. So we identified what's the criteria for a particular vendor when they return, if they have to have this minimum criteria in order for them to pass on to the next level for evaluation. So we identified these 5, and these are all pass fail. So my vendor. So one of the things that happened with my particular procurement, I started with 3 vendors, 2 of them ended up merging. So I ended up with only 2 responses. SSP and Snyder Electric decided to combine and do 1 proposal. But anyhow, that's just something that happened with mine. So I ended up with 2. I initially had 3 vendors here. But we rated, so then you come up with this criteria. Even in here, like from a technical perspective, scope of work, vendor experience, we had these different things that they had. We came up with the weighting, how we're going to weight these, and pretend like these are all blank for now. This is the completed one, and then you do, create the commercial. Your procurement person will help you with this. Supplemental, are they a minority or women-owned business? This needs to be rated. Supplier diversity. So there's some pieces in there that happen. This needs to be completed before you can get your responses back. And then when you get the responses back, you all read the responses. And then what we did was, you could do it individually. We got together as a team and we rated these. So we debated the rankings across them. We had already, we had locked in the weights, and now we were just doing the scoring as a team. And then when we were done, we could see this combined, how we rated them, how they ranked. So number 1, SSP was our vendor, became our primary vendor for this based on the ratings. Okay. So that's how you get to this particular piece. Now we're not done with the procurement for RFP. Now you need to do a recommendation to award. And this is a document. Okay, I'll just show you here. So you put together what's the value of the contract, they're multi-years, scope of work. We've already talked about that. We did a bid process and evaluation. Here's our ranking. We identified all the pieces. And then this is our recommendation, basically, to award fixed price contract. And then we get the signatures for this. It needs to be approved by the CIO as well. Both CIOs. As well as a number of procurement people. So this is something you need to do. You need to get this approval by all parties involved. Oop, wrong one. Okay. And then, so now we awarded it. And then I'm going to show you the project kickoff with a vendor. So I did something very similar, with when they, I introduced them to the PSE&G team members. We identified, who the SSP team members are, our associate integrator, went through the timelines, reviewed the timelines with them, talked about the risks that were identified, see if they had anything additional to add. I mentioned to them again that the stage gate process, right? And about what the IT PMO org structure looks like and who these other additional people that we'll be working with are, my scheduler, my controller. I talked about, for this particular project, the Energy Cloud portfolio. And I again, went into the stage gate process because some of these deliverables are actually the vendor responsibility. Actually, they're going to be doing it. I'm ultimately responsible for making sure that they are delivered. I mentioned about the scorecard process to them. There's a RACI. I talked about how we're categorizing things. The percent completes to use in their schedule. I mentioned we have this, all the templates where they were. Our SharePoint site, how often we're going to be meeting, a team calendar that I'm going to share with you in a minute, and then the meeting cadence that we're going to follow. And then I had created an onboarding checklist for them. So to fully get their LAN ID set up, everything else, we created an onboarding checklist. So that's basically it. Just make sure, when you bring on your vendors, you kind of, make sure they have an overview of the project and understand components of it. I think that's very important. Okay, let's see what's next. All right. So I'm going to switch gears now. I'm going to go to, so now I had developed my initial schedule, had my financials. I brought up the controller workbook. I didn't go through all the different tabs in it. But now I'm ready to baseline these particular pieces. And this is a meeting with the IT PMO. It really goes through, let me make it bigger for you. Kind of talks again about the overview of the project, how much funding we have, any vendors, relationships with other projects. And then this is an important one. So they analyzed the schedule in Oracle P6, and really you want all zeros here. These are all could be potential issues with the plan. So I have, I have interdependencies they're properly set. My constraints, everything's good, looks good. I have 491 activities, a lot of relationships. Just high level, they look at this, the quality of it. Then we talk about the stage gate milestones. What are my dates? These are some key milestones we have within the project. They're identified here. So this is reviewed with the, the GPM, my group product manager, myself, the scheduler, and the IT EPMO representation. Any challenges and risks that we have. And that's it. So that's how you baseline. You go through this process to baseline your schedule and your financials. That's the deliverable there. Okay, some of these other things now, I'm just going to show you. So this is where I am in my project. I will show you a few of the other templates that are out there. But some of these other things, these OCM, I have my vendor, we're working on this right now. Matter of fact, we met just before this meeting. And they're working on, they've shown me some of the organizational change management plan that has been developed. They're leveraging the template and adding some additional features to it. But I just want to show you, they're also helping with this requirement traceability matrix. We have all those discovery workshops, and out of those, we're capturing all the detailed requirements. So they're helping to build this as well. And this just is matches a requirement, business requirement to a system requirement to a test case. But let me just bring up the a few of these here. I'll show you the template. So this is a test management template. We're actually doing a system integration test, well, actually a factory acceptance test at the vendor site, a system integration test, and a user acceptance testing and performance testing for this particular project. So I haven't completed this form yet, but I'm just going to go through. So those are some of the types of testing that you need to consider for this. I'll just scroll through, see if there's anything really. I think it's pretty self-explanatory here for test management. Any tools you're going to use. Now we happen for the for our Energy Cloud Transformation Management Office, there's a test CEO Center of Excellence that's being set up and helping us to identify some of these tools and things that we're going to be leveraging for this. So we're fortunate we're going to be able to take advantage of some of those things. Let me go back to so I'll bring this up real quick as well. Traceability matrix. So it's your business requirement, mapped to a system requirement, and then it maps to a test case is really what what's meant to be done here. So you really, it maps them together. Make sure you're testing every requirement. OCM plan I'm not going to bring up. The security architecture review template. So this is part of, this is the cybersecurity. This is the next step that you need to do. We just had our architecture design workshop last week, and coming out of that, we're going to be able to fill this out, this risk assessment. I'll bring this up a little bit, but they really want to know some of the interfaces that you have. Not too fast. They want the architecture flow diagram coming out of my architectural design workshops, which will go in here. And then there's a lot of additional material. If you click on this link, I'm not going to do it right now, but a lot of additional material from the cybersecurity team that you need to review and understand. But this is the next step. You fill this out, and then they do a review of your architecture. I'm sure they come back with many questions.
And quick question, I guess under the change ticket area, you just copy and paste that chart multiple times depending on how many change tickets you have?
I'll tell you, I'm not sure about that one. I haven't gotten to this particular piece yet.
Okay.
I think the answer is yes, Sabina. But if you have a specific example that you want, us to look into, feel free to email me, but the answer should be yes.
Okay.
Okay. And now we get into design. Again, I'll bring up the system design specs. Template. Too fast. And here they're looking for other systems that you're interfacing with. Here they just have a couple of examples here. Coding standards, things that just want to know, understand. There is a lessons learned template. I'm not going to bring it up. Pretty straightforward. There are some good checklists. I'll bring up these two because they're pretty good. They help you think through your deployment. So all the sign-offs that you need are in here. Then there's the these checklists I think are really good as well. Make you think through all the particular pieces of a deployment. So I recommend you go through this and understand it, especially the checklist areas. Make sure you have everything covered for your project before you go to deployment. Now I'm going kind of fast here, but you'll have time. All these templates are out there on the SharePoint site. Again, operations. And then there's also a run book. This is, deploying the system in the environment and then maintaining it. Licenses that need to be kept up, operations, procedures, monitoring, disaster recovery, things of that nature. That's all listed in here. Disaster recovery. So I'm not going to go through the whole piece. I think it's pretty straightforward. And then post-deployment, again, really you're closing out the project artifacts, the risks, closing out the schedule. For my particular project, we do have a hypercare period. It's 90 days that the vendor needs to support the project. Now, so that's what I have for the stage gate. There are a few other things I want to demonstrate that I think are really good for the project managers to understand. So one of the things that I published was a make sure everyone was aware of. Sorry. There we go. So I published the meeting cadence. So my meeting cadence. So I meet with the core team weekly for an hour. I have my project, I call it a project steering committee. It's with my GPMs and procurement and strategic vendor management. I meet with them weekly for 30 minutes. Then I have my scheduler meeting is for an hour a week. My controllers, now I meet with these combined. So it's an hour for all three projects, my scheduler and my controllers. And then I have my Energy Cloud portfolio, which is weekly for an hour. And then I have my one I still need to set up now that I've had my kickoffs is my my program steering committee across all three projects. So it's good to identify all those, your meeting cadence, make sure everyone's familiar with it. Go back to my. One of the things I think is really important, I wanted to share this with you. I want to show you an example of meeting notes. So after your meetings, you should make sure you take good notes. And I capture them in a document. And then a good habit, I think for project managers I wanted to share is to put the follow-up action items right in the email. So they can click on the link to get to the notes. But really the important thing is you want to make sure that the action items are identified and clear and everyone understands them. So I do this after every meeting. save my notes in the SharePoint site. And then the next step that I do, I want to show you, I have an action item tracker. So I separated out from my RAID log. You don't have to, I did. That has all the action items. So every time I capture notes in any of my meetings, I add it to this particular log, unless it's something that I resolve that day. But anything that is for the future, that it's not easily resolvable, I add out here and I identify the meeting where it was also where I identified this action item. So I can clearly go back to meeting notes if I need to reference. And I have all my action items, who's responsible for it, what the target due date is. And when I have my meetings, my core team meeting, we review this at each one of those meetings. We go through the action item list and make sure people are on the hook and complete these deliverables. I think that's a good practice for the project managers. We've also identified a team calendar out on SharePoint. I think, well, it's an Excel based, but this identifies, for all the team members, both PSE&G and SS, our vendor, when they're out of the office. So when we schedule meetings, we're aware of when people are going to be out. If we have a critical deliverable, we have we know when people are going to be available or not. And we also have our contact list here, as well as SSP contact list. Then one of the things I just want to mention, I'm going to skip just another view of the timeline. And there's a RACI model that shows for each one of the deliverables. I can bring this one up. So the RACI model was developed by the Energy Cloud TMO, that for all the stage gate deliverables, there's also who's responsible for them, who's consulted. So this is available to let you know. I think it's also nice to have. I'm not sure if I haven't seen it published yet on the PMO site, but
It's about to come out, Bill.
What's that?
It's about to be published from the ops team, and I think they've added a few more that gives clarity to PM versus scheduler versus controller activities, that sort of thing. But it's going to be published soon.
Excellent. I think it's another great tool that I've leveraged. And then I just want to mention, there is we have our interfaces API. There's a difference between, so anything that's going application to application, you can use MuleSoft, but anything that you're doing, like files that are written to a drive, you need to use JAMS. Just to be clear, I wasn't sure. I thought we were using MuleSoft for everything, but there's a distinction between the two. I want you to be aware of it. And also there's a link to the MuleSoft page, COE page, that I found very useful. I thought I would just bring it up. It really has all of the process that you can follow. And they're really offering us a lot of support now. Before you had to go out and find your own developers from MuleSoft, but they're providing them now, which I think is great, the Center of Excellence. So I'm finding it very useful. I just wanted to point that out for the project managers to be aware of. That might be, yeah, I think that's it, Sharon. Guess we can open it up for any questions.
That was great, Bill. Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Bill? He's learned a lot of lessons, I know, and just the 3 stages he's been through. So you have a business case coming and have questions or in project initiation or initial design and have questions, feel free to bring those up.
Hey, Bill, this is Alan Medeo. This is really good. I like one sheet you're showing. Is this document anywhere?
It's not right now, but we'll publish
The
it.
2 left columns at least in one sheet?
So I think what we're doing, Al, hopefully this will help, is the ops team is taking that stage gate view that we showed, first that, goes through the life cycle, and they're going to be adding
Right.
the links to all the templates that you in the process flows, so that you can just have that one in the playbook, that one slide, and you can link into each of those deliverables. I mean, what he has here is linking to the ones he finished, which, by the way, is also part of the scorecard. So if you look at the stage gate scorecard, your examples can be there. But to find the templates, and with some of the feedback we got in the PM sessions, they're going to be adding the links to the stage gate playbook.
Yeah, that would make sense. I'm really concerned, not concerned, but I'm on direct and manage right now. So the 3 documents he has on the right side, those are the 3 that I found also. I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anything, but it seems like some of these may have been carryovers from earlier gates, like project risks and
Yes.
so
Yeah.
it looks like some of these are carryovers.
Yeah, those are the only ones he has here are the only new ones. So that security test sign off deliverables is what I was referring to earlier, which you do that security design review in the stage prior, and then the result of that is what they give you in this test sign off and production acceptance. So this is where they're like, we're going to give you information back and sign off on things. So it's not really another template, it's just a conversation with cyber. And then the operational readiness review, I do want to create, I think we need a template for that. I have operational readiness templates, but that really is just a session with all of your stakeholders that will be taking this over to say, we have everything we need. We're ready to take on, to essentially let the project team go and operationally support this. So I thought we had created a meeting deck for it, but if we didn't, we can add one. But you're correct. Most of this is things you already created that you're just updating, executing on, that sort of thing.
One other question, has any project gone through direct and manage gate yet? Because if so, I'd like to talk to them.
Okay. I can check with the ops team. Can we take that as an action item? We have some folks on taking notes. Let's take that as an action item to identify a project that's gone through that gate and connect them with Al.
Yeah, because we were supposed to go this week, but we've now been delayed until January for various other reasons. And some of these documents I don't have completed because we started at direct and manage. So I'd like to really, it looks like I need one of each of these checklist items, which are further up in the process. So I'll work on working backwards.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
thank
it
you.
may not be in the template, Al. If you're coming in kind of in the middle of the stage gate process, I mean, the hope would be you have some of these in some form, but it may not be, in the exact template prior. So we may be inheriting kind of, a little bit of a matrix there.
I agree. I agree. Thank you.
Sure. Anyone else have any questions for Bill? Well, thank you very much, Bill. This is extremely helpful. It's a great example of how to use it and, kind of how the information flows as you move forward in it. I will share my screen just because I want, before we let everyone go here, wanted to give you guys an opportunity to ask any questions about a informal gated or not waterfall, if you had those. So just if there's any questions about how to categorize this, because as you know, not every project is required to do this level of rigor intentionally, because it's more overhead than some projects may need, especially if it's a routine project. So, you do have the option to tailor if it's smaller, not very visible project, less risk, or even routine. If it's just mostly hardware, like a fiber project that we're just doing exactly the same thing in different geographic areas, that kind of thing. So we do have, the deliverables he was going through that show up on the stage gate process here. You can tailor them down if you fit into one of these other categories. Any questions about that we can answer before we close it out? You guys are an easy group today. Love it. Okay, well, thank you, Bill. We appreciate you going through this. I think this was a good idea. Like, I think as we roll this out to more and more projects and get further along in the life cycle of our projects and start closing things out that have used the full stage gate life cycle, I think it would be good to come back around and keep showing those examples, because as everybody continues through the stages, you'll hit challenges, and maybe other projects have already figured it out. So it's good to kind of leverage lessons learned from some of these other projects. And with that, I don't have anything else if you guys do not. So Salita, I think we are good.
No, I think that's it, Sharon. Thank you, everybody, for your time and participation. The recording will be available on SharePoint.
Thank you. Thanks again.